Okay. Well, before we lose our minds, we should probably do the show.
Sure.
So welcome to Dr. D's Discussion Zone. I am joined today by one of my friends. I think at this point.
I think so, too.
I think we're allowed to be called friends now. His name is Art. His name's Arthur Capozzi. I call him Art, so you guys, I guess, only friends call you Art? Or...
No, Art, Arthur, whatever you want to call me.
Anything.
I'll answer to all that stuff.
Excellent. All right, so if you have a comment for Art or Arthur, just leave it down in the comments below, and I'll be sure he gets it.
Nice.
So today I've invited Art, my good friend, onto the very first episode of Dr. D's Discussion Zone. Because me and him have often talked about the advantages of having multiple people, multiple practitioners approach a problem that a patient might be having. I am the owner and one of the chiros that works at Englander Chiropractic Center, also going to be renamed New Englander here pretty soon. My friend Arthur here, he is the owner, creator, founder is a good word for it, for B2BPosture.com, and he does a lot of work with patients. It's not just websites. He also does stuff with his hands and all that, just like chiropractors do, which is one of the reasons why I think me and him have always gotten along very well.
Very true.
And what we are going to talk about today, which I think is something that is really starting to dominate the medical healthcare type field, is it's a good idea to have multiple people looking at a medical problem, whether it's posture related, which might be something that you would go to somebody like me or Art for. It also can include something like an endocrine type problem. Like there's a lot of different problems that having multiple practitioners can look at that I think is a huge advantage. Sound like you were going to say something?
No, I'm listening.
He's just nodding along.
Yeah.
You're not along at home too.
I'm not going to just look over there.
Don't look at the camera. Yeah, I'm looking at their souls while we're talking. And so when it comes to something as what we perceive as simple as not slouching, is not as simple as it originally might seem, because if it was simple, then why is it that people keep doing it? If it was such a simple problem, well, why would you need a practitioner at all?
Right.
And so if it's going to be truly defeated, then I think that you have to approach it like it's an actual complicated problem, and you don't want to kind of be lulled into a false sense of security. And you can only arm yourself even better if you have multiple practitioners who are in your corner, right? Yeah. So if you think of it as like a good analogy, you're the boxer in the ring going up against life, right? You're up and let's just say life has a pretty good win record. It's been winning by knockout for every single human that's ever lived on this earth.
20 billion for 20 billion.
Yeah, right. KOs every single time.
Something like that.
Goes the distance every time. It takes body shots like no tomorrow. And so when you go up against life, it's a good idea to have as many people in your corner, whether it be people or just different skills or different things you've done with your life, to really just make that fight as easy as possible. Yeah. Because eventually you're going to lose, but you might as well go as long as you can, as well as you can, and perform as best you can so that you can hear the crowd.
Go down swinging. Yeah. Go down swinging.
He's a fighter. Yeah, go down swinging. He sure is. And so what we're going to talk about today is, I think we should focus primarily on, at least since you're here, a good thing we can talk about is looking at posture from a multifaceted, I guess in this case, approach, from me being a chiropractor and you being I guess like just kind of posture guru, I guess is a good word for you.
Yeah. Do you want me to explain it a little bit?
I think you should.
Okay, so I'm Arthur Capozzi. I'm the founder of B2BPosture.com. It's pretty simple. I worked in corporate America for 20, I guess it's close to 25 years, but locally 20 years at technology companies. And everybody knows, almost everybody in Eastern Massachusetts anyway, knows what is happening with the tech space. People are under a lot of stress. So the way I think about what I do is I work backwards from the problems that arise from sitting all day long at a desk under stress. So I have tools that I use, and that's why me and Dylan become acquainted initially, because I wanted to, get to know local chiropractors, and, he likes the idea of support from someone like myself, which is to say, I do personal training, I do massage therapy, I do functional movement and assessments, and I do ergonomic consultation for corporations. So it's pretty much that simple. And what I do is go to the corporate site and help them assess their employees' situation with respect to pain and do things to improve their productivity through awareness about their pain profile and how to mitigate it, and how to improve their posture and work within the context of their actual desk, sitting, standing, whatever it may be, and have the right metrics and the right kind of approach to make sure that they're not suffering silently and having a lot of deleterious downstream effects from just being at that desk all day long. And people are becoming more aware of that problem. So that's what I do. I just work the problem from the desk backwards to solve it.
And I will say that in modern day America, for sure, I think the majority of posture-based problems do stem from sitting, a lot of sitting, a lot of tech use, a lot of tech neck type stuff.
Yeah.
And coming at it from your perspective of somebody who's worked in the tech space as far as you have, I think offers a very interesting perspective that maybe somebody who's more athletically based, who doesn't have those kinds of problems. So let's just say a construction worker is a good example.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily find themselves sitting, which I think one of the big advantages of what we do from a multi-practitioner type standpoint is that you can have different perspectives, like Art has in this situation where he's worked at a desk. While I haven't ever worked in an office space, I might know the kind of like the surface level understanding of like, oh yeah, you sit in a cubicle in this like gray box and then you like hunch over a keyboard and you type it. I know that on a more of like a theoretical type level, but somebody like Art has looked at it from a practical level.
Yeah, fair enough.
And he's gone there in a stand. He's able to look at it in a way that I might not have a full perspective on, because he's like, oh yeah, don't you know exactly at 12:30 right after that lunch break, that's exactly when those pecs really start aching, because that's when you're, coming back to the desk to sit, it's like that kind of perspective you can't necessarily get from everybody. Right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest advantages of, I think, of having multiple people look at it. Even if they're not necessarily somebody you pay to do stuff to you, but even if you're just like talking to your friends or like who've been in similar situations, who work at desks, you'd be like, do you have any advice? Like, what good stretches do you do, or blah, blah, blah. Obviously, when you go to somebody who's a trained professional like us, you could probably get a little bit more depth. You have a more breadth of knowledge for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But something that I always like to compare it to is a lot of people, when they come to my office for chiropractic adjustments and blah, 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 they always say, oh, I self-crack, or my friend, they can crack their own neck or whatever, blah, blah, blah. The common one is I crack my knuckles. Is that bad for arthritis or blah, 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 or whatever. And as a good example, going to somebody who may not necessarily be super trained in that kind of stuff, it might seem like it's the same thing. And if you go to your friend who can like spin your neck around and get a poppy noise, is that the same thing as getting a chiropractic adjustment on a table after getting an exam, blah, blah, blah? I would venture to say, and fairly firmly can say with full authority and knowledge, no, it's not the same. What that means in this context is, well, if you're going to go to your friend to tell you about not slouching at a desk, well, that could give you a certain amount of like perspective on it. But then if you go to somebody who's like Art or me, who are just kind of like trained to specifically help you with those kinds of things, we probably have a lot of crossover. But I guarantee you that even with all of our breadth of knowledge, there's probably some kind of gap or some kind of part of the Venn diagram that he might have more perspective on than I do. Because you figure when my entire work ethic, but my entire work history, very briefly said, I've never had a job where I've really sat down. My very first job out of high school was a CNA, where I was up and about and doing stuff. Yeah. Then I worked at a grocery store where I was up and about and doing stuff. And then I was working in construction before I became a chiropractor, where I was up and around doing stuff.
Oh yeah, you were.
So I don't know the full breadth of like, what does it mean to sit at a desk for
8 hours?
8 hours
plus 5 days a week, and then get in the car and go home.
Correct. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it's like when you look at the common American way of doing things, you wake up in the morning, where you go sit at your desk, or you sit at your table to drink your coffee, and then you drink your coffee, and maybe you have breakfast, then you get up, you walk to your car, where you sit in your car, so you can have an hour-long commute to work. Driving is just sitting. Yeah. You just happen to be moving in time and space. Right. You go to work, where you sit at a desk, and then you play on your computer doing coding or whatever it is you happen to be doing. Yeah. You get up to go on your lunch break, where you go to a different place to sit at a table so that you can eat your sandwich or whatever it is. Then you go back and do more of that. Then you sit in your car. Then you go home. And then what do? You sit at the couch with your wife while you watch your favorite TV show.
If you don't manage to get a workout in.
Correct.
And even then, the workout is like, it definitely... That's great, but even then, it's not much of a pattern break when you're doing it 5 days a week. Correct.
And that actually leads, and I think that for the most part highlights the importance of trying to just move in general. But if you're going to go to somebody who's a health practitioner to help you with that kind of stuff, again, I think that we have a certain set of advantages in that. But just knowing that we are able to break that habit in a way where we can offer you some kind of, knowledge on the subject or whatever. And this is at the point where we can kind of illustrate the advantages that maybe I have over, or not advantages over, but like the benefits of like coming to see
one
me
or
as
the
opposed
other.
to you.
Yeah.
So if you were to only come to me, what would happen is that you'd come in, I'd give you an exam, I'd crunch and crack you or whatever it is that we want to do. Not everybody gets crunch and crack. I always make that comment, but there's a lot of people who don't really like big loud cracks, whatever, so we'll just do it in a different way. And I'll do some stretches, and then I'll say, hey, on a theoretical level, you should do a doorway stretch for your pecs because they're very tight. And I'll stretch them while they're here. I'll do a little bit of massage therapy, not really massage therapy, but I'll just kind of stretch out certain areas. And then
little hands-on work that's specific.
Correct. A little bit of just soft tissue work in general. And then I give you a little pat on the butt, and I'm like, good luck in the Shark Tank of life, buddy. I'll see you in a couple days.
Yeah.
Does that have an advantage in your life where it breaks up that cycle of just sitting everywhere you go? I think so, absolutely. And for some people, that's enough.
Yeah.
And I think some people could walk away from that and be like, okay, hey, that's good enough. It gets me through the day, and I can keep working, and I can play, bingo. I don't know if anybody's bingo anymore, but
well, they do somewhere.
I could play with my grandkid, and I could go play community basketball, and I have minimal to maybe no symptoms, but I can do it. That's not a problem. But one thing that you can do to take it even further is if you were to go to somebody else like art, well, then there you go. You can kind of compound on it. But before I go too far into it, if they were only to go to you, how do you view what you do just by yourself? What do you think you offer people?
Well, I mean, okay, straight up, the way we contrast is you're a medical practitioner. I'm a non-medical practitioner, right? So in a sense, I'm more of a generalist. We can assess the same problem, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to diagnose somebody. What I'm going to do is give them the basic ability to relieve pain through hands-on work in a modular way or in a total, general way, and then rebuild the body in a general way, working again backwards from the problem of sitting at a desk. So the workouts and the assessment of the problem and all the workouts that we're going to do and all the pain relief is going to be combined as a package deal to try to get you to understand how to take care of yourself better with respect to that overuse pattern of constantly being under stress and constantly being at the desk. So Dylan is going to make a medical diagnosis, and he might make adjustments. I'm going to spend much more time re-strengthening your body and creating awareness around where your posture is currently.
Correct.
Okay. So there's a trade-off, and generally, Dylan's subject for this call today is what it's like for each individual to take more responsibility for themselves with respect to their health and all of the options that they have today, right? So you can go out into the world and take the lead on your health. You can go to AI, you can go to a series of different individuals for care and determine the best path by experimentation. Dylan may not be everybody's cup of tea. I may not be everybody's cup of tea. By example of a case, we could use me. About a little over maybe a year ago.
Give or take.
Just over a year ago. I came and introduced myself to Dylan. And, after the initial, back and forth, I said to him, Dylan, I'm pretty good with exercise, and I know how to handle, this problem to me, but I can't necessarily take care of myself. And I knew that I had a problem with my neck, and I was finally getting ready to start dealing with it, right? Again, this is how I got started in the situation. The corporate life created problems for me, right? Particularly posture problems that led to neck issues. So I said, Dylan, I don't know, what do you think? He was like, do you remember what you did? I'm like, all right, let's take an x-ray.
Yeah, I took an x-ray. Yeah.
So Dylan gave me a nice freebie x-ray, right? Professional courtesy x-ray. And finally, because I needed to do this, right? Irrespective of my knowledge, solving problems like this, I needed another pair of eyes. So Dylan gave me the x-ray and we talked about it. And one thing led to another. He did adjustments on me. I increased my own awareness of the problem with my own self-care. We did a bunch of adjustments that got me a certain way, a certain degree, better.
New baseline.
Yeah. We got a baseline to work from. We improved the situation by, 40%, 50% there. And then, Dylan and I talked about it, and he was like, why don't you go talk to your doctor for x-rays and get another set of eyes on. So I did that. Finally had to sit down with my doctor. And this was a problem that ran for 4 years after 20 plus years, like I said, in the software world. So I sit with my doctor, go get the full set of x-rays and go to PT, and they start doing some back cracking in a little different area. Mainly, not to get too into the medical aspect of it, but at the end of the day, there was just some vertebrae that were frozen, and it caused, what are they called again?
We call them subluxations, but they probably have a different word.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that
and bone spurs.
And there's definitely, some arthritis-y type stuff.
Some bone spur arthritis type stuff, which he showed me in the x-ray. They needed to verify themselves, but at the end of the day, that's how you get into the PT world too. So I'm working both angles. I am now a guy looking to solve a problem. I know massage and exercise are going to help, functional movement training and all that stuff, and posture awareness is going to help. I also know getting a medical diagnosis and some attention from Dylan's perspective is going to help. And I know the third party, my doctor and the flow to PT is going to help. So the problem is, here's the thing, the problem's pretty much solved. Yeah, I haven't actually talked to you about this.
No.
Do you remember my right shoulder would just jarring pain and this
It was like stuck.
it was sort of stuck.
A little bit of it wasn't frozen, but it wasn't
It was
frozen.
icy. Yeah, it's not, when the nerve would get clipped,
Mm-hmm.
it was more like destabilized.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Yeah.
That's a good word.
But then there would be pain in the mid back, like the
mid-back,
thoracic. There'd be
Classic.
pain there too.
Classic.
So it would just run one way or the other. I had pain in my neck, pain in the right shoulder occasionally, and pain in the mid back occasionally. It stunk. After a while, back pain drives you crazy. After a while, you start thinking you're losing your mind. Sometimes it's hard to focus on stuff. You become irritable. You do. You become irritable.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Usually when you're alone, you're just like, damn it, I don't want to bend down to pick that thing up again. You know what I mean?
That's where you need the old man, like grippy,
Yeah,
gripper hands.
That's what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, correct.
And it's also like going into the laundry too, Dylan. Like there would be times when I'd be going in my laundry machine, like, man, I don't want to bend down again.
Another reason not to do laundry.
Exactly.
Oh no!
Exactly.
Oh, how can we overcome?
Exactly. So that was the what we wanted to get across. What Dylan wanted to get across was, what is it like for an individual today in our world, just like in other areas of healthcare. You have to take responsibility for yourself. You have to be prepared to ask questions and take advantage of all the information options that you have.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There's a lot. Don't be overloaded by it, and just, there's swim lanes, and sometimes the swim lanes go horizontal. And Dylan and I are, an example of, complementary, practices.
Yeah.
And
I'll say, too, kind of on that subject, I think that one big issue when it comes to the allopathic, especially, and the holistic approaches, allopathic being more like medical doctor focus, because chiropractors tend to be on the holistic side.
Yeah,
depending on
there's the blend.
Yeah, there's definitely some crossover, kind of whatever. Blah, blah.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother discussion. But one thing that I think is important to know is that in today's world, especially in all aspects of life, there's going to be some level of, I don't want to say maybe not miscommunication or misinformation. One thing that I always try and foolishly fool myself into thinking is that every single person out there, no matter what they say, has other people's best interest in mind. It's not true, naturally, especially anywhere where there's pain. And pain is, quite honestly, to your credit, like you were saying, is an emotional thing.
Yeah.
If we thought of pain as just logical, it probably wouldn't be as bad as it is, because you can think like, oh, my mid back hurts. Let me move each spinal bone on an intersegmental type level. Where do I notice? Like, no, you think, oh God, my back hurts. I'm not going to be able to sleep, and now I'm going to lose my job, and then I'm going to become homeless, and I'm going to have to
annoyed.
Correct, right? And then you have a whole other emotional aspect to it. But the point I'm getting to is that there's going to be a level of misinformation in regards to, and again, I'm just going to look at it from the maybe somebody doesn't fully understand type situation, where there are going to be people out there who say, oh, if you buy like shoe orthotics is a good example, all of your problems will just disappear. They'll just magically disappear. You'll never have a problem again. Those headaches, it's got to be because your feet are flat.
Yeah.
Is that true? It might be. And I think that when you look at how complicated the human body is, when you look at the way the ankle works, something that I always like to tell people who have headaches and all that stuff is, if you don't look at your ankles, because every single time your head goes off kilter, your entire body has to essentially rotate into it to make it so that you stay level with the horizon. It's called the horizon level effect or whatever. And that's the way that the human body manages its balance, other than the little inner ear canals. That's how you maintain balance with your eyes, is by keeping your eye on the horizon.
Okay.
What does that have to do with the ankle? Well, if your ankle's messed up, now maybe your neck is moving in a way that's not appropriate, because now your body feels like it's going this way, and you have to essentially kink your neck in order to maintain that eye thing. What is the point I'm trying to get to? It's that it's always a good idea to look at alternatives, but as soon as somebody says, oh, hey, we're the one all be all fix all, I immediately my tail starts to wiggle.
Yeah.
And I get a little cautious, because I think to myself, well, only Siths deal in absolutes, as the Jedi would say.
Yeah.
And when you go to somebody and they claim that they know exactly what's going on and they are infallible and they'll always know exactly what it is that is going on with you, is that necessarily somebody you want to trust? No. But I think that's the advantage of a not maybe multimodal, if that's what you want to call it, but having more than one person in your corner is maybe you do go to the guy who has the foot orthotics and you put you put that in your shoe, and then when you put your foot in there, you're just like, oh, this is the most heavenly feeling I've ever had in my entire life.
Maybe.
But I still have headaches.
Yeah.
Is that a bad thing that you did it? No. Yeah. I think that the way to perfect health is complicated, and there's a lot of different things that can go on, and there's almost never just one thing causing a problem when it becomes like a chronic issue. But that doesn't mean that there's not going to be people out there who promise you the world and deliver you maybe half of it, shall we say.
Sure.
And so that's one of the advantages I think you have with going to multiple people, is that you can kind of catch those I like to call it like the safety net, like with trapeze people when they're swinging around. It's not safe to do that without something down at the bottom. What happens if you miss the handle and you fall? Well, that's why you should have multiple people in your corner.
Yeah.
And so in our situation, again, kind of going back to, I think we lost the thread there for a little bit, but we're kind of like going down the winding path. When it comes to a posture type related thing, you go to art and you're going to be much more inundated, maybe might be the right word, or I don't know if that's the right word, but you're going to be much more focused on a exercise soft tissue based approach to it.
Yeah, with some awareness, with awareness added.
Correct. Yeah. And I think anytime you ever go to any practitioner, mindfulness is probably the most key part of it, because if you're not mindful of it, how do you know if it's working?
Right.
Because you shouldn't just be going off of vibes.
Baseline.
You need essentially a baseline to measure yourself against. And so in his situation, the advantage you would have with him is you could go to Art and you could say, Art, I'm going to pay you whatever. I need you to stare at me for an hour and either massage me if that's what you feel like I need, or I need to do like a stand on the ball and do the 5 points thing. I think that was the 5 points thing.
Yeah.
And which I thought was absolutely brilliant. You could go to him for that kind of thing, but the one thing that you might not get from him is you may not be able to get a specific intersegmental adjustment, which is what chiros are famous for, where he might think, oh, hey, your thoracic spine is very, very stuck. Let's soften it up and get it moving and get it strong. But maybe Art doesn't know exactly, thinking like, oh, well, whenever you have a specific problem with this like shoulder blade, oh, that's got to be T7.
Yeah, and that's not really necessarily my role, at least not to that level of fine granularity.
Correct.
So that's where, again, like Dylan's intimating, that's where he steps in, right?
Right.
So there's a relationship between practices and practitioners and modalities, and have fun with it.
Yeah.
Experiment with it. Don't feel like it's a drag. Put more eyes on a problem, and you'll find that you're going to have a much better chance of going from 20% to 80 to 100%.
Yeah.
And that's a healthy way to be thinking.
And I'll say that the one shortcoming, and I use that word very loosely because I don't know, I might be a little biased. I tend to like chiropractic, I don't know if you know this, I make a living off of trying to help people with that one very tool.
No doubt.
It's complicated, my emotional attachment to the thing that I use to help people. But when it comes to a lot of chiropractic practices, and I think that this is very monetarily based on how insurance companies, and again, that's a whole nother discussion point on how much we suffer at the hands of having to deal with the way insurance meddles with what we call like treatment, right?
Yeah.
With the way they treat with like the care plans, I guess is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Because what happens with chiros is that inevitably, in order to keep the lights on, I have to see so many people within such an amount of time where I get enough to where I can keep electricity on and keep helping people, and I can afford lunch or whatever, right?
Yep.
But that means that the amount of time that I have that I can dedicate to a specific patient is significantly lower than what Art can have. Now, are there going to be exceptions? Of course. If somebody were to email me and be like, Dr. D, I really hurt myself and I've got this emotional problem. Can we talk for an hour? And I'll be like, yeah, absolutely. Well, it might be a little more picky on what time it is. Maybe come on my lunch break and we'll talk about it or whatever. Mm-hmm. But if you have access to somebody who is like Art, where you can come at it from a, as you really just want to kind of work out specifically oh yeah, it really, really hurts when I pick up a weight and I go into a fly. With Art, you have the time to be let's really dissect that fly.
Yeah.
And so if you come to me, I'll say, okay, let's go into the fly. Now, granted, I probably have maybe I might be a little bit more, I don't want to say skilled. That seems kind of rude to say, but there's a level of quickness that comes with doing this job because I have to make such quick judgment calls with people. You get really good at noticing the big macro problems. Like if you go into the fly and the shoulder blade doesn't move correctly, well, then it's a shoulder blade problem, and I kind of ground it down to, okay, there's like probably like, there might be like one of 3 muscles that is the problem. One or all 3 of those muscles might be a problem, because those are usually the main culprits. And that's a really good way to kind of get the big macro look at it. Chiros are great at that. Chiros, if you go to a chiro, even just if they give you the most rudimentary exam, and they're the most like, I don't want to say simple, but most like baseline family chiro, they'll get the macro. I'm not worried about that. If you go to a chiro who does chiropractic, that's another discussion point that I'm not going to get into before I start frothing at the mouth. If you go to a chiropractor who does most baseline chiro, at the base minimum, he's going to get your spine to move around better, and that's going to help you, whether you know why or not. The chiro might not even really know, but you'll feel better. Now, if you're going to look at it from a specific viewpoint of like, okay, maybe there's a chiro, because I like to do I do probably a lot more like soft tissue work than a lot of other chiros, not to disparage the industry or whatever. You know, just all chiros have different philosophies. I happen to be much more soft tissue based than some, where if they do that fly, I'm like, well, let's look at your subscap. Let's look at your serratus muscles.
Spend a few minutes on it.
Let's spend a little time on it, soften them up, and then let me adjust specifically T6, and then we'll get you to stand up and do it again. Does it feel better? Boom. Well, there you go. In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, it's a T7 issue because of the way they sit and work at a computer or whatever. But then if you go to art, the advantage would be, okay, well, we can very specifically work out your rhomboids, because you can tap it and have him do specific rhomboid type movements. Could you do that with me? Hypothetically, yes. But ain't nobody got time for that. To do like when you're trying to, from like the stereotypical way of doing chiropractic, because there's just a limitation of it. And, you know, if you know a chiropractor personally, can they help you with that kind of stuff? Yeah, probably. But that's why people like art exist.
To work out the whole chain.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so when you're looking, and this is something that I am constantly telling patients, I'm sure you tell them quite a bit too. When they come to me, I adjust them, and the second visit, one of the first things they say is, what can I do at home to where I don't have to come in here all the time being in as much pain or whatever. I just want to come in and say hi or whatever, that kind of stuff. You go to like a maintenance type care type thing.
Sure.
And the one thing that they're always looking for and that they'll always ask for is, they say, what stretch can I do that will make all my boo-boos go away? And I have found from 8-9 years of doing this job as of time of recording, that I almost all the time, there's a few exceptions that come up pretty consistently, pecs being one of them and hamstrings kind of being another one, that a lot of times it's not stretching that they need. They need some vitamin Fe. They need some vitamin iron, because they need to start pumping. They need to strengthen. And I think that to strengthen, you need time to do the exercises. Time that I can't like do in my office, because I'm a little 3-room, thing here. I say little. I think I'm pretty. I think I think my place is pretty nice, actually. I don't think it's a little. It's
unbelievable.
Hey there, it's me, Dr. D, and I know you're watching this channel, and I really appreciate it, and we're having a lot of fun, but something that I have to ask you, can you please like, favorite, and subscribe to this channel? It'd be a really, really helpful thing, and, you know, little guys like me, little old chiropractors like me, just trying to make our way in this world here, I keep getting told I'm supposed to tell you guys to do this stuff, so please do. And if you can go to that little bell, I think it's like below us, and you give that a little click, and it says to just remind you when the videos come out, that would just be swell. So thank you very much for watching our videos and making sure that we feel as appreciated as we do, and hey, can't wait to see you in the next one. I get back to the video.
You know, if you come here, if I had the time and the ability to, I would just sit here and watch you do, 3 sets of 20 bicep curls. I would love to do that. But unfortunately, there's just not enough time to do that. And so when you go to somebody who knows the personal training route of it, I guess is a good way to put it, and I say to him, because me and Art know each other, I can just text them and be like, hey, that one patient that we both treat, I would think a couple shrugs would really help strengthen their traps to help reduce some of the strain going on in their upper neck, blah, 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 whatever. And so if you do something like that, again, it's much easier to take care of a problem. It's much easier to rehabilitate a problem completely, as opposed to only going to one practitioner who can scratch half the itch. And again, there's a lot of people out there that'll get that itch scratch, and they'll be perfectly fine with it. Are they wrong? I don't think so. But if you want to go above and beyond, I think that the sum of the parts of going to more than one practitioner far exceed the costs that are associated with doing those things. But the problem is, as practitioners, I find a lot of value in chiropractic and healthcare type stuff. You probably do too, because you focus on this kind of stuff. But when you look at Jane Doe, who's got 3 kids, works in an office, barely has enough time to make dinner and all that stuff, do they have the same values that we do? Probably not. Is that a bad thing? No, I don't think so. But what it does do is it creates a limitation on how far are they willing to go to fully rehabilitate a problem and make it go away. I've always believed from the philosophical concept of, well, if you're spending time on something important like kids, the kids eventually won't be as much of a problem because they'll grow up and whatever. And then maybe when she's in her later, like in 10 years or whatever, when the kids are grown and they're going to high school, she has time to like go to the gym or whatever, then we can talk about that. Maybe the values shift. Maybe if they come and see you, we can change their values. Is that fair for us to do? I think so, if they want it. But for us to like force our interests and our values on them, is it the right thing to do? No. But I do think that if you go to one of us, it does certainly open the door to gaining value, because now all of a sudden you might be exposed to the idea of, okay, well, I go to art, I've never seen a chiro. I saw a video where they, some guy tried to rip somebody's head off with a towel. I'm terrified. And are they wrong? No, I don't think so. I think that that's just, the message that they received, and that message personally terrifies them. And I think that in communication, there's 3 parts to it. There's the part that comes out of the mouth. There's this zone around us where it has to transfer through the air, and it has to nail you in the face or go into your ear hole. And then your ear hole has to go to your brain, where it goes through a filter of your own perceived values and all that kind of stuff. Politics is a great example. We're not going to get into it. But if you see a candidate who says, oh, hey, I did X, X, and X while I was traveling to this area, somebody who was on their same side might hear that message and be like, wow, what a great guy. I can't believe he did all these things. That's really cool. He did it with that. And then the person on the other side will be like, I can't believe they did that.
Right.
How dare they spend money on a plane flight to this area that wasn't that bad? They should have done. And in the middle of that, you have to think, well, yeah, it's going to apply to all parts of life. It doesn't just apply to politics, as much as we like to pretend it doesn't, because again, there's a lot of emotion when it comes to pain. There's a lot of emotion when it comes to politics.
Yeah.
And I think that applies to almost all parts of life. But again, I think when you have the advantage of having a multimodal kind of approach, you have the ability to see maybe different points of view from people that you trust. So maybe they come to me and they say, I don't want a personal trainer because I'm scared they're going to hurt me or whatever. And I'll say, that's an absolutely reasonable assumption based on the things that you have seen, based on whatever it is, right? And I say, but I know a guy who very much specializes in this kind of stuff, and I know him personally, and I say, if he breaks you, I'm going to break him.
There you go.
And then I'll break his knees.
You're all set.
And then you're all set. So you're in good hands when you have a violent chiropractor who's going to make sure you got the baseline of survival there.
I don't want to get whacked.
Right. So, and I hope does that make sense, or was my rambling kind of pointless?
No, I think it does make sense. At the end of the day, use the options available to you and really matrix them in your own personal network.
Yeah.
You're networking. Dylan, me, you meet one of us separately. Next thing you know, you're meeting the other guy.
Correct.
Or wherever else in your healthcare journey with other practitioners. Find out who they know and work the relationships to help you hop the different, rocks in the pond until you get to the spot where you want to be.
Right. And so even, and this will be my last point because I don't want this video to take forever or whatever, but something that I find, even if it's not necessarily a musculoskeletal type complaint or a neurological complaint that a lot of times people go to chiros for neurologic type stuff, that's what sciatica is, yada yada. But there's a lot of mix between those things, right? I should just do that thing where like it's like a pharmaceutical commercial where there's like all the side effects that like quickly just like scream up the top of the screen and be like, oh yeah, all these things, blah, blah, blah. So like when the human body does its things, the human body is quite complicated. I don't think I'm really blowing anybody's mind by telling you that. There's a lot of things that could potentially go wrong, that there's a lot of them that I might not ever catch.
Mm-hmm.
So like, let's just say hypothetically, you have somebody who has a hip that hurts. Well, if a hip problem comes in here, I'm going to look at it from a chiropractic standpoint. I'm going to say, okay, your glute muscles are tight, your IT band's tight, and your inner hip is tight. That's kind of weird. Why are all of them tight?
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's one or the other. You stretch it out and you get a better
fair enough.
Somebody came into me and they had this kind of problem, and I kept treating them, like they would say like, I get a lot better, but then I quickly kind of go back to where I was before, and I noticed that the pain never fully goes away.
Yeah.
And as a young doc at the time, I thought to myself like, okay, well maybe it's just he needs more adjustments with more time, he needs to rest or whatever. Come to find out, he had a necrosis of the hip, which is essentially his hip bone doesn't get enough blood, and the actual like hip, the acetabular part of the hip, is essentially dying
Yeah.
because there's not enough blood.
Interesting.
It's yeah, right. And so if you come to a chiropractor and you see that, especially one who's been around the bush a couple times, I guess now if somebody were to come in with that, I'd be like, oh, okay, maybe we should take an X-ray of this hip just to make sure there ain't no necrosis.
Right. Yeah.
But like if you go to a baby chiro like I was then, I wouldn't recognize that kind of thing. If somebody were to come into me and have, let's just say, what's a good example? Like some kind of a hormonal problem.
Yep.
Where they have thinning hair, their eyes are bulging a little bit, as a good example. Actually, it's a good example. Let's see if you can figure out what this is.
Okay.
So a classic example, they have thinning hair, they're losing weight really, really fast, their eyes are bulging out of their head. What's wrong? Those are the classic symptoms of a very common problem that people have.
Wow.
And I'm not doing this to disparage him, but I'm doing it to kind of prove a point.
Go ahead. Tell me.
So that's usually indicative of like a thyroid problem.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
But is he trained to deal with a thyroid problem?
No.
Not necessarily. Am I trained to deal with a thyroid problem? Not really.
Right. Either of us should be prepared to observe that in
Correct.
our own way, in our own swim lane, and say, hey, you need to either get a proper assessment of the situation.
Correct. If I see that, would I catch it? I hope so. And then I'd say, you don't need to be here. I mean, I'll adjust you because it'll help in some ways because it'll just help regulate the nervous system. But I'll say, like, you need to go see your PCP to get an endocrinologist thing so you can get on, thyroid, the dexothyroid or whatever that drug's called. One joke I always like to tell is, like, there's a lot of people out there that think chiro, there's a patients will come to me and they'll be like, Dr. D, you can fix anything. And I'm like, not necessarily. If you come in here with a bullet wound, don't come to me. You should go to the hospital. Don't come to me for acute lead poisoning. That is not in my particular, scope of care.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't necessarily need to put all your hopes and dreams on one single person. That's why there's more than one practitioner out there. And one of the smartest things, and then I think I'll prove my point with this, or close my closing thoughts on this, is a teacher in school once said to me that there's enough suffering in this world that, we don't all need to take it on. We can spread it around, trying to take care of it, right? We don't need to hold all the suffering in one place. There's plenty of it going around. We might as well all work together to try and get rid of as much of it as possible. And I think that's a really good way to look at it in my mind. I think it's Dr. Lucenti from Palmer College of Chiropractic. I think it was Dr. Lucenti. Or it was Dr. Raj. It was one of those two. But either way, shout out to them. Palmer, Florida alumni here, Alatomator, right here.
Nice.
And so, just a call out there. But a lot of that stuff I think is really important to look at, where if you go to somebody, they might catch something like, I call it the not rights, right? I think that's another Dr. Lucenti thing. You look at somebody and you're like, something about you's not right. I don't know what it is, but it's not a me thing. You need to go see somebody else or whatever. Okay. Like if I look at an X-ray and I see a tumor.
It's not a me thing, but go get somebody.
Right.
Go
so
talk to somebody.
If I take an X-ray here and I see a tumor, I'm not going to be like, that's a multi-melanoma of the throat. I'm going to be like, that's a not right. You should go to your other doctor to have them get a radiologist look at this. They'll be like, oh, this is a super specific carcinoma of the blah, blah, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so that I think is a huge advantage when it comes to having a multimodal approach too, right?
Yeah.
And because I guess in your situation, have you had any situations like that?
So the thyroid example, I was actually, as you were talking, a little surprised that I haven't seen that out in the world more myself. I mean, how often do people report thyroid issues that would be that acute or show that?
It's not common,
okay.
But because a lot of times, especially with thyroid problems, there's like other things going on.
Yep.
And a lot of times, I think when thyroids tend to go, I don't want to say kaput, there's kind of like certain age brackets where it happens. Like, it usually happens when they're young, or you can get like a hyperthyroidism after a hypo. Usually like after an infection or something.
Okay.
And so usually when they are having kind of like thyroid type problems, a lot of they might not go to a chiro because it's not like, oh yeah, hey, my hair's going thin, I should go to my chiro.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think it does pay to be at least generally aware that these things exist. A DVT is a really good example where it's like, I can't treat DVTs, but you best bet I know what it looks like. If you come in here with a deep vein thrombosis, I'm going to do my little chime thing here because I always make fun of in my videos when people use abbreviations and don't explain what they are. So a deep vein thrombosis can happen for a variety of reasons. It could be post-surgical. It could be sitting on a plane. It could be being a smoker. But if your calf really, really hurts and it's getting swollen and red and moving it and all that hurts, and even just kind of putting your hand near it feels uncomfortable, don't go to the chiro. You need to go to the hospital because that's a DVT, and that might be a game ender right there.
Yeah.
So I think it's important. It's very important for people who do physical type stuff to be able to know what that looks like. So that if they come in, I'll be like, I'm going to massage your calf.
Yeah.
And then that's no bueno, as they say.
Yeah, we're trained in pathology to the point where we can pick up contraindications.
Correct. Red flags.
Yeah, red flags.
Yeah, big red flags.
Yeah.
And so, in your case, and now that I mentioned this, I'm sorry, I'm going to knock on.
Go for
it's
it.
not wood, technically. Hopefully you never get one, right?
Yeah.
But if you do have somebody who comes in with these kinds of problems, now you're more kind of aware. You're like, okay, hey, now I know this exists.
Yeah.
Let me save everybody a lot of time and effort.
Oh yeah.
Go to your endocrinologist
Exactly.
because you have hypo or hyperthyroidism.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of one of the advantages I think of having multiple people looking at you.
I mean, on a slightly different track, I've had breast cancer survivors, a number of them.
Sure.
So we're on the other side of the problem now. They've already been through everything and diagnosed and everything.
Sure.
I find it interesting. It's hard work for them.
Yeah.
To rebuild muscle that really is partially gone.
Yeah.
You know, tissue that's constrained. You have scar tissue.
And there's a lot of psychological stuff too.
A lot of psychological stuff. Yeah. It's a challenge for a practitioner like me to put a load on the system or to massage. You know. Be really, really interesting. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, I don't think I've had anything terribly exotic come my way.
I hope you never do.
Yeah, that's if a guy walking in with that kind of thyroid issue. Well, at least now I know exactly what to do. Yeah.
If you ever have a question, just text me. Be like, hey, I have this person with this kind of problem. Like,
Check out this situation.
Yeah. What do you think of this?
Yeah.
And like you're not gonna catch them all. Like hopefully you catch red flags. You certainly hope you got a 100% batting average on that one.
Yeah.
You want to bat 1,000, but and that's important to realize that we are just people doing people stuff.
Yep.
Believe it or not, I've looked at x-rays where I didn't see something, and then I think and then again in the back of my head I'm like, something's just not adding up.
Right.
And then I go back and look at it and be like, how did I miss this?
Yeah.
How did I miss that their ureters, is a good example, are calcifying because they're having like UTIs or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
You see that kind of stuff, and sometimes you just, while you're in the middle of the monotony of your job, I mean, I couldn't imagine doing anything other than being a chiropractor. And I never regret going to work a single day of my life. But let me tell you, sometimes even just the monotony of, looking at the same stuff every day, you kind of get, I don't want to say you get complacent, but there's definitely a level of like, okay, your eyes are immediately drawn to certain places because you're like, okay, 9 times out of 10 it's this thing, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I always try to make sure that I don't like push the rest of it to the side, because a lot of times when people come in, they're like, my back hurts because I sit and work at a desk, and I'm like, okay. And I'll even tell them, I know what's wrong, but I'm going to act like I don't, because I don't want to miss it.
Right.
So what if they do something and I'm like, oh, okay, what's with this weird bump on your back?
Right.
What does that mean? What does that mean? I do think that having the ability to just have another set of eyes is really important, right? So even I, from a personal viewpoint, have had a couple of skin tumors taken off of me because I lived in Florida, and that was ultimately one of the reasons why I live in Mass, is because there's not a lot of sun here. There's not nearly as much of it as in Florida. And Kara, the lady love of my life, hopefully forever, she looks at my back pretty frequently if I'm not wearing a shirt, because she's looking to see if there's anything growing there that's not supposed to be.
Did you overdo it with sun a couple of times as a kid?
Well, I'm as bad as pale as Casper the Friendly Ghost, so there's not a whole lot
that didn't take much.
Let me just tell you, I used to go for runs in my neighborhood that would be like 10 minutes, and I'd come home with a sunburn. That's how bad it was.
Yeah, fair enough.
And so
you got to watch it.
Very much so. But you figure, and Florida's a little tricky because we're going on a whole different tangent here. But like when you're in Florida, a lot of times you spend your time inside because you're not trying to be in the sun. So as soon as you go out into the sun, you're not prepared for the sun. It's not like I don't have like, oh yeah, my back pocket suntan, a sun block. I really squirt that on there, so I can walk from building to building on the campus quad or whatever. But I do think that even just having a regular set of eyes is a big advantage to what it is that we're talking about right now. But anyway, so I think we've kind of beaten this topic pretty well over the head. I don't know about the death, but
yeah, and we've wandered down other paths, but I guess we've.
Like Florida.
I think we got the point across. I hope.
So, closing thoughts. Anything? What do you think about the approach, having multiple people, like a multimodal, multi-practitioner approach?
Proceed, experiment with it, and take notes.
There you go.
Have an Excel spreadsheet. If you're having a complex problem, for example, and you're trying to nail it down, you might talk to 3, 4, 5 people. have a spreadsheet with some criteria that you come up with and track what you're getting back in terms of the details of the meetings with your doctor or other practitioner. Keep track of it.
And I find to what he's getting to, if you do keep track of some of the keywords of what they're saying, if one word keeps repeatedly pinging, I think it adds a lot of credibility to what it is that they're saying, because there's a little bit of inter-practitioner like reliability, I think is what they call it. There's like, I forget what it's called, but there's like sensitivity, and I forget there's another word for it, but the idea of, you know, something pinging as a positive but also being accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you go to somebody, if you come to me and I say, oh, your thoracic spine is tight because of your S3, God, if it was your S3, I'm a bad chiro. No, don't believe me. But if I say like, oh yeah, you have a tight thoracic spine because your shoulder blade's not moving properly and your T7's stuck. Okay, then you go to Art independently of me, and he says, oh, I think your mid back's tight because your back muscles are tight that are going into this area. He doesn't even say T7.
Mm-hmm.
But now all of a sudden you're thinking like, oh, okay, well they're kind of saying similar things a little bit differently. So I think that they're probably both looking at it the right way.
Yeah, and you can bring these terms up with the other practitioner.
Yeah.
You know, hey, Dylan, my personal trainer said X, Y, Z.
Yep.
You know, it's not that it can't help.
Yep. And my personal ending thoughts on this is, I do think that it's a great idea to get a second opinion if it's possible, even if you go to a different chiro. Does that chiro say something kind of similar? The one thing that I always say is you want to get as much information as humanly possible, but you want to be mindful of how you're getting it and who is saying it. One, to protect yourself. And I find that if you go to somebody and they say, hey, I think this is X, if you ask them why and their first reaction is to get upset, that's a red flag to me. If they can't really properly describe why it is that they're thinking that the way it is, even if they're wrong, at least it gives you the peace of mind knowing they're not just like taking a dart and throwing it at the board and being like, yeah, I think it's, you got myasthenia gravis because your eyeballs are drooping or whatever, you know, right? And so I think that if you are going to go for a multimodal approach, it's really, really valuable, but it is a very good idea to try and look at it where the sum of the parts is greater than it is if you were to go to them individually, and you want to make sure that the people that you are putting in your corner actually have your back.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the most important parts of finding people that you like. If you go to a chiro, like Art was saying before, they're not always going to be your cup of tea, and that's fine, but that's not, I think, negligent by any means. Maybe you just don't like their bedside manner.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe they don't deliver information in a way that you like.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. But if you can find a couple people in your area who do give you information the way you like, even if it's like not your most favorite way of doing it, maybe somebody's a little gruff or whatever. If everybody seems to have your best interest in mind, I think that the majority of your problems become much more manageable. And any kind of way, not even just a musculoskeletal type of way. And I think that there's a lot more crossover between us than I think you might originally think. So in our office, we have a child psychologist, right, like in my office, like right across the little hallway we have here. And I think that people would be very surprised to know how involved emotions are when it comes to musculoskeletal type problems.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. His reaction's perfect.
It goes back to the stress thing that I concentrate
Correct.
on with my B2B posture consultation element, right? The ergonomics element of sitting at a desk might cause you to raise your shoulders to support a forward head, okay? However, a big chunk of this is the unbelievable amount of stress you have with all the deliverables.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? So this happens, and then up the muscles, you're gonna have that energy end up in the head. You got headaches and, you know, all kinds of emotional issues that get driven from that. So yeah, they're the psychosomatic world, you know, it's extraordinary.
That should be the next thing we talk about.
Yeah,
Psychosomatic.
that's a good idea.
I'll get maybe I'll have our child psychologist come over and talk to us.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it'll work really well.
Jeez, yeah, it would.
I'm full of just I'm inundated with brilliant ideas.
Yeah.
I just think my hands
Yeah,
are too
totally.
slow to keep up.
No, I know. It's unbelievable. He's like an artist. It's like he paints little boats all day.
I do. I paint little dollies all day. Yeah, that's for sure. Dr.D coming at you right now. Anyway, so I think that's a good place to end it. Otherwise, we'll just sit here and ramble for hours on end. But I think the point is there. Go see other people. I do think it's a good idea to have a good medical team on your side. And I think that if you do, I think it's well worth it. And if you need a chiropractor, I'm here. And if they need a posture analysis guru, they have Art.
Thank you very much for listening to the show, everybody.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So make sure you guys keep it popping out there. If you have any questions or anything like that, leave a comment down below. We are located in Massachusetts, up here in the Lexington, Waltham, Bedford, Concord type area.
Yep.
Is there any other parts of
pretty much
Woburn,
covers
whatever, Burlington area?
Woburn.
And whatever. And yeah, you
Newton.
you New Englanders and your stupid. it's pronounced Worcester.
I'm from Connecticut.
Okay, fine,
So I'm
whatever.
not really
You're
New
like
England.
half New England. What are you
Exactly,
doing? You're more
exactly.
tri-state. Well, okay, what side of Hartford were you on?
I'm more tri-state.
Okay,
I'm
that's
closer to New York.
Yeah, how did I know?
I
You look
am.
at this guy.
I'm more tri-state.
Okay,
I'm
so
Italian too, so we're real tri-state.
don't flame us in the comments on New England geography, or otherwise, God. You know what? Carol once said that New York was a part of New England. And yeah, that I was like, Carol, you can't say that kind of stuff, or we're gonna get stabbed if we don't.
Yeah.
She said it while we were in New York.
Yeah.
She's like, oh yeah, I think New York's part of New England. I was like,
they-
whoa, I don't know this lady.
I think
whoa.
I think the other way.
Yeah.
it's the other way.
I mean, Boston could be quite. I'm a chiro, but I may not be your chiropractor. I hope some of this helped. And if you have any questions or anything, ask a trained practitioner.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll want to help you out. But
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching this all the way to the end. If you did, if you cut out somewhere in the middle, we'll never know, I guess, because you didn't get this far.
Yeah,
But if that's
true,
the case,
true.
really appreciate you listening to me. Thank you very much. Art, it was good talking with you, my friend.
Thanks, Dylan. Good to see you.
It's good to see you as always. We'll catch you guys in a month, week, whatever this show becomes periodical, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Awesome. That sounds cool.
Be a real fun one.
That room looks good in the background. You want to leave the door open, Dylan? Yeah, let's experiment. Yeah, let's see what happens. Yeah.
You can start talking. I'll just start doing pull-ups in the back.
Yeah, that'd be fine by me.
Really
You would get
what we're doing here.
no complaints. I would just keep going. Like, Dylan, do a few
Here, I'm
pull-ups.
gonna do a challenge. This is the challenge of the show. You have to do pull-ups till the other person shuts up.
Do some pull-ups.
This will be all in the outtake. Oh, put on your best fancy person face.
I will.
If we need it. I think lighting's good.
I do too. I think it's a little more natural. Wow, look at that light.
That's
that one.
That's where it's at.
That's your light.
That's the mood right there.
That's your light right there. It's awesome.
Again, quick little. This is for the outtakes, I guess. But I remember I was walking around. I used to be a Red Wings fan for hockey, and I would walk around when it's cold up here, which it commonly is, and I'd be wearing my Red Wings jersey.
I've seen that jersey.
It's ratty. It looks like crap because I've had it for so long.
Awesome.
People would stop in the middle of the street to heckle me during a Bruins game. There'd be like a day for a Bruins.
Where were you when this would happen?
I was in Newton.
Oh my god.
I was walking my dogs, and the guy stops with a truck. This little like
awesome.
not a micro truck, but a pretty small truck.
Yeah.
And he's like, Bruins are playing tonight. What are you, some kind of sucker?
Yeah.
Whatever. It's like, God, come on, man. I just want to walk my dogs. I don't want to be heckled.
That's cute.
That's the New England experience. So if
I
you
like
want
it.
that experience, you come to me up here in New England area, and I might not be.
That was awesome.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it?
It is fun.